Okay, I introduce now Paolo Dell'Aversana. Thank you, Paolo, to be again with us because you were already with us the last year. But I like to remember that the keyword of the last year was waves.
Yeah.
So, and this time is maps, so you are going to present something related to maps, I think. Paolo is a physicist and geologist, but is also expert of a lot of things, music and poetry. So I also invite you all to follow you on the social network because it's very quite interesting. Sometimes you have to translate from Italian to English, but it's not this the issue. Okay, Paolo has inside so two components or starts in the same body because you are a scientist, but you have also a part of artist. So in start philosophy, you are live these two components of stars. So I don't take more time and I leave you the floor, Paolo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Massimiliano, for your introduction. And thank you everybody for attending this presentation. And I have a few slides to show, so I will try to share my screen. I hope you can see it.
Yes, Paolo, we can see the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. You can see it. Okay.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay,
thank
good.
you.
So today I'm going to talk about maps, semantic landscapes, and new connections between science, technology, and art. So in this second slide, I show you the outline of my talk. I will start by motivating why maps are so important for human cognition, and I will explain then what type of maps we use, starting from very standard maps, so geological maps, and moving through more complex types of maps, such as conceptual maps, semantic maps. And this will introduce us to the very important concept of creative process. So I will try to explain my point of view about the creative process in art, science, technology, music, and why all these creative processes have some common background in the different fields, the different areas of human knowledge. And finally, we'll go through a real example of connection between art, digital music, science, sound engineering, technology, and so on. And finally, we conclude with some key remarks. So why maps? Why maps are so important for human beings? Basically, the answer is provided by the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio. He says that the human brain has the ability to create maps corresponding to the external and internal image. Basically, Damasio says that our brain is a perfect cartographer. So it continuously produces maps on the neocortex, but also below the cortex in the most ancient part of the brain. And this is the brain's response to external and internal stimuli. So this is a sort of neuroscientific reason why maps are so important for our knowledge. But what kind of maps we produce? We work with many different types of maps. I am also a geologist, so I usually work with geological maps. This is just an example of a Vesuvius map. And this is just a representation of a real territory. This is a couple of different types of maps. In this case, they are 3D maps. On the left side, we have a 3D representation of a geophysical parameter that is directly related with the types of rocks in the underground. And in colors, we have different types of different values of seismic propagation velocity that is related with the different types of the rocks. And this is a typical 3D seismic tomography display. On the right side, we have a different type of 3D map. It is a brain imaging tomography image. And despite these two representations are oriented to two completely different purposes, they are based on the same concept, on the same mathematics. So basically in neuroscience, as well as in geosciences, we have similar approaches for different objectives. Basically, we want to represent complex systems, so geological systems, as well as biological systems, using maps or 2D or 3D representations of some important, relevant parameter. But these are probably just the most simple types of maps. We can move to a different type of maps, conceptual maps. Maps can link not only geological or geographical objects, they can link concepts, operators, algorithms. For instance, maps can represent conceptual maps can show the relationships between some algorithms or functionalities as it happens in a machine learning workflow. This is, for instance, an example for a machine learning workflow that I prepared. And here we have a lot of algorithms linked with each other. Each one of these circles represent an algorithm, a complex machine learning algorithm, neural networks, random forest, decision tree, and so on. And many other algorithms that are linked in the same map through these branches. So we have here a very complex map from a conceptual point of view, linking algorithms rather than geographical or geological objects. And each one of these cycle is coded, represent a code, Python code. In this case, I programmed it in Python. And so we have very complex mathematical and statistical objects that are linked with each other in the same map. And this is another type of map. This is an output that I produced by using my machine learning platform for medical diagnosis. So here I am just distinguishing different types of human cells based on some biological attributes. So another type of very complex map based on machine learning process. And now we can move to a much more complex type of map, semantic maps. So maps can represent conceptual domains where complex significances, complex meanings are linked into the same semantic space. What I mean by semantic space, it is a conceptual domain that is populated by meanings, by significances that can be shared by two or more people, two or more human communities. And the semantic space can evolve over time continuously through some type of creative process. So we can see how the concept of maps and of semantic map bring us directly to the important concept of creative process. Creative process is a very important concept in the frame of our discussion because, in my opinion, if we study what happens in our mind and in a big or small human community when we create something, so if we investigate about the creative process, we can really understand the links, the similitudes, the analogies, but also the differences between what happens in art, in science, in technology, in music, and so on. So the creative process represents something that is the common background between these different fields of human knowledge. The basic concept is that the creative process represents a sort of dynamical connection between meanings, between significances. And this is the same in science, in art, in music, in poetry, in philosophy, despite the intrinsic differences between these various fields of human knowledge. But what happens in our mind or in a human community in terms of creative process show a lot of similitudes, similarities, analogies. The creative process, in my opinion, is the progressive conception and realization of something that I call the semantic structure. What I mean by semantic structure, I mean a painting, a music, a poem, or a mathematical formula, or a theory. So everything is able to integrate some type of complex information as well as emotions into the same coherent system of meanings. So the creative process is a dynamic process that evolves towards a semantic structure that finally can be a poem, can be music, can be a song, but can be also a mathematical formula or a scientific theory. And this is the common background between art, science, technology, music, poetry, and so forth. Let me do an example, a real example. In September, last September 2021, we performed a very interesting project that was created and organized by the artist, the international artist Marco Rotelli, here in Milan, in the Royal Palace of Milan. And this is a real example of connection between art, music, poetry, technology, geology, physics, mathematics in the same physical space that was the Royal Palace of Milan. The key words, the key concept of the Experiri event are the following. First of all, it was a multidisciplinary event, as I told you. So we combined the work of poets, scientists, musicians, and other scientists in the same location. And we, during the deciding phase of this event, created a real map of multiple significances. So it was a real semantic map that was transformed, was translated directly into a true semantic landscape during the performance phase. So in the same space, we put all together different types of people thinking and discussing all together and working all together. So we realized something that I call reflection, that means reflecting during the action and acting during the reflection. So thinking while doing or discussing while working at the same time in the same space. Just a few examples of video mapping performance during this event by the artist Marco Rotelli. In this case, we have also a direct connection between mapping and technology because Marco Rotelli uses the video mapping technology through which he can project on the walls and on the roof of a building his performance in real time. And this is my performance during the same event where I produced in real time the sonification of geological events such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and so on, translating their sound directly into digital music. So it was a sort of combination of sound engineering, music, geology, mathematics, and art. And here we have, in the same room, we have, in a different moment, the performance of the singer Alberto Fortis, a combined performance of music and poetry. And here we have other examples of paintings and video mapping performance by the artist Rotelli. So the Experiri key concepts, and this is very important, can be exported into different projects and different types of organizations. First of all, the non-hierarchical organization between people, different people working in the same space at the same time. We work all together without any rigid rule, but just using a sort of self-organized cooperation, combining creative, technical, and pragmatic people through a continuous involvement and motivation of everybody through the concept of reflection. And very important concept is hard work, and multiple competencies all together addressed to the same goal, but without forgetting the joy of doing things. So let me conclude with these final slides. So I have introduced and expanded the concept of maps, starting from standard geographical maps, moving through more complex types of maps, such as semantic maps connecting meanings at various levels of complexity. They are able to create landscapes of meanings through which dynamic connections can be made between artistical, musical, scientific disciplines. And Experiri event was a recent example of that. The last concept is that art, music, design, poetry, and so forth can help us to introduce an aesthetic component in every type of human organization. This aesthetic component is fundamental for triggering creativity, innovation, and motivation in people. I want just to acknowledge the artist Marco Rotelli, that is the creator of Experiri, and all the other people who attended and organized this very important multidisciplinary event. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Paolo, for showing how our maps support creativity during the main phase of the performance, and then the process is a bit disconnected from maps in the phase of during the performance.
Yes, the performance was prepared based on a semantic map. So first of all, we tried to create a sort of mapping project. In that phase, we created maps of maps between artistic performance, musical performance, scientific performance, and that maps were transformed directly into a semantic landscape, so in a true realization of the map in the real space of the Royal Palace of Milan. Okay.
And Experiri, unfortunately, I could not attend in Milan because I could not organize myself. But do you think that will be replicated somehow? For instance, during the next festival, Science in Genova?
It would be a pleasure, but we already had the proposal to do it, to replicate it at the Festival of Philosophy and Science in Foligno. It was an idea.
I know it.
Yeah, and because in this Experiri performance participated also the sociologist Domenico De Masi, who is one of the organizers of the Foligno Festival, and he proposed to replicate Experiri also during the Foligno Festival.
Okay, we have to request now. Okay, thank you very much, Paolo, again.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you to be here.